Two childhood pals, their boyhood bond twisted into a deadly rivalry. That's the conflict we see at the very heart of the Ben-Hur story. But does that mean it was intended to be the central conflict? Whether reading the original novel, watching it acted out on stage, or getting swept up in the grandeur of the 1925 silent film, it's the longing for primal human justice to be served that draws us in. Early on, a naive young prince of Judea, Judah Ben-Hur, is seized for an act of insurrection against Rome. His mother and sister are slapped in chains, and Judah is sent off to a living death as a Roman galley slave. Behind this calamity stands Judah's old schoolmate, Messala, now a military tribune in charge of keeping peace in the territory. The betrayal of one brother by another is a tale as old as Genesis. But if all that's intended here is another take on the Cain and Abel story, Ben-Hur could have ended with a climactic showdown, in this case a chariot race between the two opposing foes. That was indeed the ending given us in a brief bootleg film version of Ben-Hur released in 1907. Director Sidney Olcott collapsed the whole novel into Judah's comeback victory in the bloody Colosseum at Antioch. To Sid Olcott, Messala's reason for bringing down the House of Hur was not important, but that was most certainly not the case with the novel's author, Lew Wallace. Even after the race is over, the story itself has more laps to run. Wallace published his Book of Ben-Hur in 1880, and readers have kept it in print ever since. Those who look at it today as some ancient Victorian relic forget it came just a decade after Leo Tolstoy's classic War and Peace. Wallace admired the Russian author and aspired to write an even more timely tale set during America's own Civil War. The son of an Indiana governor, Lew Wallace served as the youngest Union general in the war between the states. He commanded regiments in the Battle of Shiloh and at Monocacy, and his forces even occupied Baltimore for a time in order to block a Confederate advance on the nation's capital. Participating in that war of brother against brother changed Wallace forever. To atone for his own part in the tragedy, he went on a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. There he began work on a new story about hope and healing. This one concerned a young prince of Jerusalem, born at the same time as a mystic healer named Jesus of Nazareth. Wallace titled his novel Ben-Hur and gave it the subtitle A Tale of the Christ. But even though it didn't take place in the Civil War, the spiritual odyssey of his young hero still had much in common with the path taken by Pierre Bezukhov in War and Peace. Wallace's intentions were always clear. The graphics he chose for the back cover of the Broadway souvenir program show an earth freed of its shackles. For Wallace, Judah's struggle for emancipation is the heart of the story. But what drives Messala to betray his childhood friend? He has to know the powerless prince poses no risk to Caesar. We're told that Judah's younger sister Tisra was once Messala's favorite. Did Wallace toy with the stock melodramatic villainy of having Messala rebuffed by Tisra just to motivate his revenge? Decades later, sex and lust were finally blamed for that ultimate display of big-screen villainy. In his 1959 screenplay for the remake, writer Gore Vidal pinned Messala's treachery on unrequited homoerotic longing. To a hammer, as the old adage goes, everything is a nail. For Lew Wallace, the conflict at the center of Ben-Hur can't be settled by a chariot race, because it's not a story about rivalries at all. Judah and Messala each has his own puzzle to solve. and their destinies can only be decided in the cosmic arena.